Shabbos Daf Chaf Aleph continues the Gemara's discussion about the list of wicks and oil which are appropriate for use for Shabbos candles. The Gemara will ask how that applies to a regular fire, a bonfire, which is not Shabbos candles. The Gemara will then try to figure out what shemen kik is. There'll be 3 pshatim in that. That'll take us to a discussion of what exactly the kikoyon deyona was. What is this tree called kikoyon? Then the Gemara will ask why is it that certain oils are disqualified. Then begins 4 blot in a row, which aren't really discussing Shabbos, but they're discussing Hanukkah. So we will discuss the proper wicks for use on Hanukkah, whether during Shabbos or during the week. That'll be dependent on the halacha of whether or not you have to relight Hanukkah candles when they go out. Then the Gemara will begin the discussion of the halacha specific to Hanukkah. What is the right time for lighting on Hanukkah? How long does it have to burn for? How many candles should you light? Where's the proper place to put the menorah? Do you need a shamish or not? Who needs a shamish? And some other basic dinim of Hanukkah. Then the Gemara will ask what exactly is Hanukkah and discuss the framework of the Hanukkah story and how high the Hanukkah candles should be placed. But before all that, we're in the middle of a discussion about the wicks that you can use for Hanukkah. So the Gemara says, any of the wicks which you said you cannot use in Shabbos, you are allowed to make them into a bonfire. A bonfire might be used for heat or might be used for light. All these things are permitted to make a bonfire, whether it's lit on the ground or it's lit in a special stove kind of device. Either way, it's all okay because there is no concern that you will end up adjusting the flame. The various different things that are in the bonfire light themselves, and there's no concern there. Okay, now, the Mishnah and its list of the oils which you aren't allowed to use, you aren't allowed to use shemen kik. So what is that exactly? So the Gemara brings 3 explanations. Shmuel says, I asked all the sailors, and they told me that in some seaports there's a bird, they're called the kik bird. This shemen, this oil is made from the body of this bird. Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda said, it is cottonseed oil. And Reish Lakish said, this is from the kik, it's from the word kikoyon, it's from the special plant called kikoyon, which shaded Yonah Hanavi in his Sefer and Sefer Yonah in the story over there. Now the Gemara has a brief discussion as to what exactly the kikoyon is. Rabbi Bar Chana says, I saw a kikoyon and has large leaves like a palm tree. It grows from swamps, and merchants like to hang it in front of their stores for shade like an awning, also because it smells nice. And from the seeds of this tree, people make oil. And in Eretz Yisrael, the sick people all rest under the branches of the tree. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah, and the Gemara wants to know why is it that the wicks, which we said in the Mishnah you're not allowed to use, why aren't you allowed to use them? So the Gemara says because they misachseches, which Rashi defines as either they flicker or they don't draw the oil correctly. Now, why is it that the oils which aren't allowed to be used, what's wrong with them? They're not drawn easily into the wick, and therefore they won't burn well, and somebody may come to tilt the lamp in order to have the oil drawn up the wick. Now, Abaye asked Rabbah, if you would add a little bit of good oil to a bunch of bad oil, it would facilitate the drawing of all the oil, and then it would draw well. Are you allowed to do that? Or are we afraid that if we let you light bad oil with a little bit of good oil in it, you'll end up lighting bad oil without any good oil in it, and then it's not going to burn well, so you'll come to adjust it on Shabbos. What's halacha here? So Rabbah said, you're not allowed to. Even if you add a little bit of good oil, you're not allowed. So Abai said, why not? And Rabbah said, because you're not allowed. Now that's not much of an explanation. It's a bit of a strange exchange. Rashi says, because we made a rule that you're not allowed to use this oil, and in order to make that rule stand, we couldn't let you use it even if it was mixed into other things, because otherwise people would end up using the oil without good oil mixed in, which is pretty much what Abaye was referring to. So Abaye, he didn't accept this so easily. He brought a proof that you are allowed to. And in order to do that, Abaye quotes a brisa. The brisa quotes a machlokes between the Tanna Kama and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. The Tanna Kama says that if you make a wick out of a mixture of good materials and bad materials, it's no good. You're not allowed to use it. However, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, in my house, we would wrap a wick around the nut. And a nut obviously doesn't burn. And that would be okay. So Abaye says, you see, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel doesn't hold like you, Rabbi. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says you're allowed to wrap wick material around a nut. So Rabbi said back, he said, what do you bring me a proof against me from Rav Shimon ben Gamliel? I'll bring a proof to me from the Tanna Kama. So Abai said, no, that's not valid. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel told me he wrote in the Brisa, this is what he did. That means he actually went and followed this halacha. That's a much stronger thing than somebody who just said an opinion. Saying an opinion is not as strong a proof as an actual Maisa Rav, an indication that he performs a halacha l'maisa. So anyway, Rabbi said it's not a kasha. Anyway, Rabbi Shimon did not put the nut in there in order to be a not good material together with a good material. It's not what it was. The nut was just there to keep the wick floating. It was a little floaty to keep the wick above the oil. And therefore, there's nothing to do with this. It's not a proof against me at all. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. If all he was doing was floating, so why does the Tanna Kama have a problem with that? So Rabbi said, it's really all Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. You read it wrong. The beginning of Shimon ben Gamliel says you're not allowed to mix good wick material with bad wick material. And then he says, but if one of them is meant just to help it float, so that's not a problem, and then you are allowed to. The Gemara, however, now asks another kasha on Rabba, who says that you cannot mix a little bit of good oil with the bad oil and light it, because we have a statement of Rav Bruna in the name of Rav. So you're allowed to take chalev, that's the forbidden fats of an animal, which we said are not good for use as a oil on Shabbos. You're also allowed to take the insides of a fish that you grind up, and these two things, you're not allowed to use them for oil, but if you put in a little bit of good oil, then you are allowed to use it. So this very clearly shows that Rabbah is wrong. This is very clearly against Rabbah. So the Rabbah answers, he says, no, these two things are really okay. There's no problem with these two oils. Melted chalev and ground up fish insides are good. The only problem is that they can easily be confused with not melted chalev, solid chalev, and not ground up fish insides. Those are forbidden. So these are only forbidden to use gzeira. You make them to use something else. But if you put a little bit of oil into these, so then it's okay, because we don't have to make two gzeiras. We don't have to say that you can't use this with oil in gzeira. You may use it without oil in it, and if you use it without oil in it, you may use it even if it's not melted or it's not ground up. That would be a double decree, and that we do not have to make. Okay, now the Gemara begins a discussion of whether or not these halachas apply in other areas. So first of all, the Gemara will ask about the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. It's not Hanukkah yet, it's the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara said, the Rami Bar Chama said, that you can learn from a brisa that any wick or oil that you aren't allowed to use for Shabbos candles, you can't use for the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash either. What's the reason? The pasuk says lahalois ner tamid, and we can make a drasha from that it has to be able to go up. The light has to be able to burn by itself without assistance. If it's a type of wick or oil which will need assistance to burn properly, like all these which are forbidden to use on Shabbos, then you can't use it in the menorah either. It's supposed to burn without assistance. So the Gemara has two kashas in that. First of all, there's a Mishnah that says that they used to make wicks out of worn out pants of the Kohanim and out of the belts of the Kohanim that got worn out. Now the pants and the belts of the Kohanim had a lot of wool in it. And we extended the Mishnah earlier, yesterday, and we said you can't use wool. So why would this be allowed? Obviously, something that you're not allowed to use for wicks on Shabbos, you could still use for wicks in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says this is not talking about the menorah. If you look carefully, the Mishnah there is describing how they made Simchas Beis HaShoeva. That was different. Simchas Beis HaShoeva, fires didn't have to have this special halacha of lahalos ner tamid, that it has to be able to burn without any assistance. Okay, now the Gemara has a different question, because we have a brisa that says they used to use worn out clothing of the Kohanim, worn out Bigdei Kehuna, in order to make wicks. And here it's not talking about Simchas Beis HaShoeva, here it's talking about the menorah. The Gemara says, okay, you're right, but here it doesn't say the pants of the Kohanim, and it doesn't say the belt. It just says clothing, and it's referring to clothing that did not contain wool. It was made out of flax, linen, and there's no problem using those for wicks. Even our Mishnah will allow you to use those on Shabbos. Now the Gemara jumps into the halachas of Chanukah by beginning with a discussion of what wicks and oils you're allowed to use for Chanukah candles. Now, the Gemara will discuss two separate issues over here. Are you allowed to use these wicks and oils for Chanukah candles during the week, and are you allowed to use them for Shabbos? These two questions will give us three opinions. Now, what are the issues involved? If you're allowed to use them during the week depends on whether you hold that if the candles go out, the Hanukkah candles go out, you have to relight them or not. If you hold you have to relight them, you aren't going to want people to use candles which may go out easily because they have to relight them, and we're afraid that they may not. On the other hand, if you don't have to relight them, so then who cares? Once you lit it, you did the mitzvah. It doesn't matter if they go out or not, then you wouldn't care what kind of oils or wicks they use. Now on Shabbos, there's a different question. On Shabbos, there's no issue of relighting them. Obviously, you can't relight them on Shabbos, but on Shabbos, the issue is, are you allowed to read by the light of the Hanukkah candles or not? If you're allowed to read by the light of the Hanukkah candles, then we certainly wouldn't want you to use one which may go out, or may cause you to adjust them. If you're not allowed to read, so then nobody cares. You're not going to come to adjust it anyway because you can't use it. So the Gemara has three opinions. Over here, the first opinion is going to be Rav Huna. Rav Huna says you're not allowed to use wicks, which you're not allowed to use for Shabbos. You're not allowed to use them for Hanukkah candles, not during the week and not during Shabbos. What's the reason? During the week is because he holds that you have to relight them if they go out, and we're afraid that you may not relight them. And on Shabbos is because we hold that you are allowed to read by the light, and therefore you may come to adjust them. Rav Chizda says you're allowed to use them during the week, but you're not allowed to use them on Shabbos. Why? During the week he says you're allowed to read them, you're allowed to light with them because he holds you don't have to relight them, and therefore you don't care if they go out. But on Shabbos, you still have a problem because he holds that you are allowed to read by them, and therefore you may come to adjust them. Now Reb Zeir, in the name of Rav Masna, says, or possibly Reb Zeir in the name of Rav, you're allowed to use it whether on Hanukkah, you're allowed to use them for Hanukkah candles whether on Shabbos or during the week, because you don't have to relight them and you're not allowed to read by their light, and therefore there's no possible problem if they go out in either situation. Now, the Gemara says that this explanation of Rab's opinion was said over by Rabbi Yirmiyah, and the Rabbanan took this explanation and they said it over to Abaye, and Abaye didn't accept it. He did not like it. But later, much later, when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael, and he said this over the name of Rabbi Yechanan, who was in Eretz Yisrael, then Abaye accepted it, and Abaye was somewhat upset that he had not accepted it early, and he said, if I would have been Zoicha, I would have accepted it when I was younger, and then I would have added it to my things that I chazer often, and I would know it well. So the Gemara said, what's the difference? He heard it now, who cares? The Gemara said, no, because the things that you learn when you're younger stick with you, and Abaye felt like he missed the opportunity to add this to the things that he knew when he was young. Now the Gemara asks, how can anybody hold that when you light the Hanukkah candles, and if they go out, you don't have to relight them? How could you say that? There's a brisa that says that the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles is from sunset until all the people have left the streets. The streets are empty. So that seems to indicate that it has to burn that long, which means if it goes out, you have to relight it. So he says, no, that's not what it means. It either means that that's the times in which you may light it in the first place, if you didn't light yet, as long as there are still people in the street, from sunset until the time when people leave the street, you're allowed to light. That's the correct time for lighting. After that, you can light. Or the second thing this may mean is how much oil do you have to put in the candles to burn in the first place. You have to put enough oil for it to burn from sunset all the way until people have left the streets. But if it goes out, if the wind blows it out, or if the wick drowns, certainly not a problem. You don't have to relight the candles. Okay, now the Gemara launches deeper into the halachos of Hanukkah. And the Gemara says, first of all, you said that it has to light as long as there are still people in the street. What people? What are you referring to? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Chana said, until the Talmudoi have left the streets. The Talmudoi are Palmyrans. They were the last people in the street because they sold wood for people's fires, for their furnaces, and people only went out to buy wood when they came home and they saw that it was cold and they needed wood. So therefore, these people would stay in the street till well after everybody was already home. And they came back to the market, and they found them there. Only when that was all over did they leave the street. So up until then is called the Zman of lighting Hanukkah candles. The Gemara now discusses how many candles should we be lighting on Hanukkah. So the Gemara says there are 3 levels. The minimum is each household has to have 1 candle every night. The second level, the Mahadrin, those who are circling around searching for better ways to do a mitzvah. So they say that you should have each person in the household should light 1 candle, not 1 for the entire household. And the Mahadrin, Mahadrin, those who really want to do the mitzvah as correctly as they can, they have a different number for each night. And Machlokas Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, how it works. Beis Shammai says you start with 8 and then you have 1 less each consecutive night. Beis Hillel says you start with 1 and you have 1 more each consecutive night until you end up with 8. Now the Gemara has 2 versions as to what the explanation of this Machlokas is. The first version, the Gemara says, is that Beis Shammai says you light the number of days that are left in Hanukkah. Beis Hillel says no, you light the number of days that have passed already, counting today as a day that passed. The second version is that Beis Shammai says you light the way they brought karbanos on Sukkot. They brought 1 carbon less each day of Sukkot, so you light 1 candle less each day of Hanukkah. While Hill says no malan b'kodesh ve'in meridin, you always go up in holiness and not down, and therefore you do not do less as you go on, you do more as you go on. The Gemara says that in Tzidon there were two old men, and one held like Beis Shammai and one held like Beis Hillel, and the reasons that they gave for this machlokes was like the second version we saw, that Beis Shammai says you light like they brought Korbanos on Sukkot, and Beis Hillel says you go up in holiness, you don't go down in holiness. Now the Gemara asks, what is the proper place to put the Chanukah menorah? So the Gemara again has three levels for this halacha. The correct place is within a tefach of your door, facing outward. Major machlokas Rashi and Tosfos here. Is this talking about the door of your house leading into the yard, or is this talking about the door of the yard leading into the street? Now the Gemara says, what if you do not have a door to your house? Obviously, you don't have a door to your yard either. You live on an upper floor, and your entrance to your up floor is inside the house of the bottom floor. So the Gemara says, then you put it by the window. And then the Gemara says, if it's a time of sakana, Rashi explains that there were people who did not allow candles to be lit except during non-Jewish holidays. So if it's a time of sakana, if it's a dangerous situation, you just put it on your table inside your house, and it's there for you and your household to see. You don't have to worry about the rest of the street being able to see it. Now, the Gemara now brings the halacha of a shamish, that you need an extra candle. Rava says you have to have an extra candle, that you should be able to use the light of that candle, and you will not be accidentally using the light of the Hanukkah candles. Now, if you have a bonfire in the room, so the bonfire gives light, so you don't have to worry about having an extra candle. But if somebody is a very important, respected VIP person, so he is not usually going to use the light of the fire. He's usually going to use the light of a candle, and it's not enough for him to have a bonfire in the room. He has to have an actual shamish candle in the room. Now the Gemara says, what is this Hanukkah? What is Hanukkah all about? Which miracle is it about? So the Gemara says, on the 25th day of Kislev begins the 8 days of Hanukkah. You're not allowed to fast on those days. You're not allowed to say eulogies on those days. Why? Because the Greeks came into the Beis HaMikdash and they contaminated all the oils. And when the Hashmonaim beat them and threw them out, they went looking for oil to light, and they couldn't find anything that was still sealed with the seal of the Kohen HaGadol. And they finally found one small jug, which was enough to light for one day, but a miracle happened, and it burned for 8 days. The next year, they made it into a Chanukah, into a Yontif, with saying Hallel, and special praises and thank yous to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, now the Gemara goes into a totally different discussion related to Hanukkah, and this is a Mishnah in Maseches Baba Kama, which talks about if you caught something on fire. So the Mishnah says, if a spark flies out from underneath a blacksmith's hammer and it sets something on fire, he is chaya, he is responsible for the damages that he caused. If a camel is carrying a huge bundle of flax and he's walking through the public domain, Rosh Hashanah, and his flax is so overloaded that it sticks into somebody's window and it catches fire and it burns down the building. So the person who overloaded the camel so much, he is chayav. However, if the candle was outside the store, it's in the street, so then the person who put the candle there is chayav. And Rabbi Yehuda says, but if it's a Chanukah menorah, that's why it's in the street, so then it's not a problem, you're not responsible for that, because that you have permission to do, you're allowed to do that. Now, says Ravina, if that's true, that means that obviously you have to put the Chanukah menorah less than 10 tvachim high, because if you're allowed to put it higher than 10 tvachim, so you should have put it high, so that it would not be interfering, would not catch fire by a camel walking by loaded up with flax. The Gemara says that's not necessarily true. Maybe you are allowed to put it 10 tvachim high. We do not want to make people responsible to put it that high, because we're afraid they may not do the mitzvah at all if you force them to put it that high.